Hi, everyone. Today.
All right, so you guys can hear me fine, but you guys sound distorted. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you fine. So today we're going to be looking at a wonderful list of Chinese celebrities and historical figures with historian and sinophile, your chill ISFJ, Jami Wilson.
Woo.
And the rest of the diagnostics team who can make it. So I'm thinking, should we start with Ai Weiwei first?
Ooh, yes.
Okay, let's do that, because I know you've been eager to look at him.
It's my favorite.
Let me just get out the shared screen so we can get an interview of him. Because I don't think we'll be able to get any English videos of anyone else. So I think it'll be a good person to start with.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh. Application window. There's YouTube. Chrome tab. There we go. Okay. Let's see what I can find here.
All right.
Oh, this is interesting.
Welcome to Added About.
Taking a while.
Chinese artist and activist Ai Weiwei. Welcome to the program. So you received the Frank Schirmacher Prize in Zurich this week, and Swiss businessman, collector, and diplomat Uli Sieg said at the event that you are uncompromising and relentless when it comes to defending values. And you jumped in and said, "You mean my prize?" So besides being one of the greatest human rights activists and contemporary artists, do you consider yourself a good businessman too?
I consider myself a good businessman. I think the ultimate businessman is not to talk about business, but the values. So in that sense, I'm top businessman.
Because
okay, so really that's quite interesting. There's that the emphasis on values being more important necessarily than the actual business acumen.
Yeah, he's very for the people, let's say. He wants the social media to follow him and to interact with people as well.
Interesting. Touch a little bit more.
When you talk about your values, the business comes automatically?
I think yes. I think we all, as human, are behaving, leading to very practical reasons, and the philosophy of why we have to make a business and what kind of business we prefer or we defending or we make an effort is always need to be answered.
And when Uli investor to China, you tried to sell him some art, and at the time he was very surprised how cheap it was, and it was the first time he had to bargain the price up. So I wonder, have you gotten better in selling your art?
Selling art is very strange business because the value of art is very hard to determine. Why we put certain price on Jack Matty or some other artworks, and it's cannot be clearly rationalized. So in that sense, I don't really care about the price. It flows with the with the river or whatever.
But you still
I'm a little bit confused by him.
Yes. Well, it seems to me, at least from this, that he's not actually particularly interested in the actual money he's making from what he's selling. He's far more interested in the ideas and messages he's perpetuating.
Yes.
And that,
I guess it's just a question of what your definition of a good businessman is.
Yeah. It seems.
Sorry, guys, I got disconnected for a moment.
That's okay, Kamani. We're just watching. It's interesting. Mate, just watch us a bit back again, Kamar, just for you to see, because I found that was particularly interesting.
I managed to catch bits and fragments of the video, but the audio on my end has been spotty at best. I got the part where he was talking about the importance of values and how the practical concerns kind of come automatically from that.
Well,
it definitely sounds like a FITE type assessment of how he operates.
Well, it's very interesting you should say that, because the next thing he says, which I think you missed, it suggests something a little bit different to that. Let me just play that back again.
Selling art is very
First time he had to bargain with China, you tried to sell him some art, and at the time he was very surprised how cheap it was, and it was the first time he had to bargain the price up. So I wonder, have you gotten better in selling your art?
Selling art is very strange business because the value of art is very hard to determine. You know why we put certain price on Jack Maddy or some other artworks, and it's cannot be clearly recognized. So in that sense,
hold on, guys, I'm gonna have to try another browser. See if that helps.
Oh, is it? Are you not hearing very well?
Yeah, if you guys can hear me, but I'm hearing you guys.
Ah, okay. Well, what I'm getting from that is the extroverted logic is not in a very valued or even strong position, and I'm on the verge of thinking maybe it's even vulnerable from that. But let's take a look at some of his quotes just to see if it's corroborated.
Do you mind if I give some context to what he's done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's like kind of an infamous figure in China because he will go against the Communist Party at every turn. Like he went around and did this picture series where he took a picture of himself in front of all of these kind of government establishments where he was flipping them off and posted them on Chinese social media and then got kicked off of that. And so he keeps finding ways to get back into the social sphere so people can see the radical things he's doing through his art, basically.
So he's something of a provocateur?
Yeah, I would say so. He even he gets stalked by cameras quite a bit because of the government. A lot of people will watch his place. And so he ended up making this sculpture of this cameraman. Like, he'll do whatever he can to kind of poke fun at it. And he said at one point he didn't care if he was liked, he cared if he was funny.
Okay. Let's see. Some of the quotes. Hang on, let me share this.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's very confusing.
Kamanli's back. Let me see if I can let him on. Let me just go to some of these quotes so I can add him back on again. Hang on. Kamani, you're back. Can you hear us now?
I can make out fragments, but there's a whole lot of distortion.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
Okay, hold on. That groan came through clearly. Hold on.
Okay.
Clear now. Keep talking. I'll let you know if it starts getting distorted again. All right.
Let's look at some quotes via.
So far, so good.
Way. So it says here. This simple form of repression, of using the method of not letting anyone speak, will never succeed. I'll never leave China unless I'm forced to, because China is mine. I'll not leave something that belongs to me in the hands of people I do not trust. The internet is like a tree that is growing. The people always have a last word, even if someone has a very weak, quiet voice. Creativity is part of human nature, can only be untaught. I feel powerless all the time, but I regain my energy by making a very small difference that won't cost me much.
Okay, that is more indicative.
I see myself as not as a leader, but somebody who initiates things or finds the problem or provokes a discussion. You have to be always ready to engage, willing to participate. When events or history happen, you just have to be aware and respond. I've never planned any part of my career except being an artist, and I was pushed into that corner because I thought being an artist was the only way to have a little freedom.
He talks about freedom all the time. Like, that's what he's always seeking, it seems like.
That's interesting. It's interesting that, again, that lack of interest in prices, more of the interest in the ideas he's spreading, and this embracing of freedom. I'm not really getting gamma, though.
I get more beta, I feel like.
Yeah, that's the impression that I got.
Yeah.
I was thinking of beta type with weaker F.
So I'm perhaps leaning.
Yeah, not wanting to give ground on. Yeah. Hello.
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 No.
Yeah.
But also, I find that he was asked about being a businessman. He said he is a good businessman because that with values and makes someone a good businessman. And then he goes on and he's shown to have completely contradicted what makes someone a good businessman in a more conventional sense, which is make sure the price, knowing what the price is and trying to raise the price. And it seems to me in that aspect that he takes the words that he's given and he constructs values which are not necessarily linked to the reality of the situation in his approach towards business. Trying to see what else we can find.
He's more interested in principles of business than necessarily like the actual act and practices that would make someone a good businessman.
Yes, it's also the idea is only really what's important. So anything he'll take with as being good at anything, he'll take as being about the ideas rather than negotiating prices.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can see some other interviews of him. Should we continue with this one?
Yeah. So from a little bit I was able to glean from the audio, it sounded like he started from like his values first, and then business and practical matters just automatically flow from that. So whatever he is, he's not TE leading, but it seems like he might be FI leading, or at least FI ego. So far.
Okay.
River or whatever.
But you still have a lot of staff to pay. I know that you have a big staff that sometimes works on your artwork, so you have to pay them as well. So I guess you can know how many costs you have. And
yes, exactly. My tactic is I first create the problem, and it's always my tactics. You know, you settle yourself with a set of problems, then you start to find solutions, and I've been lucky. You know, I did make a lot of problems, and I quite successfully settled them, or still make sure I can meet the target. So.
Okay, so I guess you said you're lucky. I would say your art commands higher prices now. Does this translate into more freedom for you? Because then you can fund your art or your activism.
Yes, what does freedom mean to him?
And no, and I think we're born as a free person. You know, that we have to stand. We have to really understand that point.
We have to fight for it to keep it.
Very Rousseauian.
That little freedom, it takes a lifetime.
What was that, Vlad?
Very Rousseauian.
Could you elaborate a little bit more?
Oh, nothing really indicative of that. Just like the principle of man being born free, that goes back to the whole Thomas Hobbes versus Rousseau debate on the nature of man.
I am still getting the idea of freedom almost as a principle of mankind, rather than the freedom in terms of what I can practically do.
I kind of thought it was more in line with the freedom of speech. I mean, I've seen him talk about that though a lot, like especially in terms of America. Like, he's wanted to get to America for a while.
Mm.
And so he's always doing this radical thing that's saying something that he shouldn't be saying, and then causing more drama.
Is he actually prevented from leaving the country?
So he was. I actually don't know where he is right now, but he has several times been tried to get out because he's been imprisoned on and off and had guards come after him. And it's always like he knows he's going to get in trouble for what he does, but he does it anyway because he thinks it's like his right to.
Okay, that makes sense. Talk a little bit more.
Effort, and of course, price numbers. It doesn't mean anything. Your real value is only be measured of how you spend those money. It could be a penny, or could be millions or billions, but the spending is the art, and I think so.
So one of your current projects is filming a documentary in Hong Kong about the protest.
The spending is the art.
Yes, that is
very cryptic.
Yeah, there is cryptic language there.
And you sent a team there. How many people?
We have a team about 5 or 6 people over there for past 100 days. Project like this, we have not just one, we have 5 ongoing, and never have a clear business plan because you never know what is going to end up, when it's going to be finished and what will be cost. So that is a lot of money.
And who funds that? Who funds that? Do you have?
I fund myself because that's a challenge I don't want to give to anybody else. That's the only pleasure I would have to suffer, from bleeding.
From bleeding.
He challenges himself too. Wouldn't that be something like that? I don't think that'd be suggestive SE, right? It'd have to be higher.
So what would you say there?
Like if he's saying that he challenges himself, then his SE should probably be higher than suggestive, right?
Maybe it's not necessarily the case. I think someone with suggestive exercisation can take on greater challenges himself. It depends also what that challenge is. He hasn't been entirely clear what there is beyond funding this himself.
Yeah, I think there can still be a determination or drive towards something greater found in SE suggestive types, but almost paradoxically, they can remain in a state of inertia and inaction, which it can sort of goes against that idea and prevents them from achieving that higher thing.
Yes. Let's take a look at some of his art. I think that's also a very important thing to look at, as he is an artist. Hang on a second. Okay.
Hey guys, I'm back. I tried rebooting.
Oh, good. You can answer better. That's good. We can hear you fine as well. As a landmark exhibition example work from 1995 up to present day, take a look at some of the key works to know from across Ai's career. Still life. The work suggests Ai Weiwei's complex feelings surrounding China's handling of social history. There's around 4,000 stone axe heads. That's interesting. It has things lined up in quite a linear way, but some lines are different from others. These are more circular. These ones are more rectangular. Do you know much about his artwork, Jamie?
Somewhat. Like I said, like the photo series. I did just came to mind though that he does have a big issue with the Communist Party not telling the people the truth. There's like some kind of earthquake or something that happened and it hit this school, and the government refused to tell parents like which kids had died. So he gathered a group of people to go in, identify the bodies, and then he released within an art piece the names.
Wow. There's a bit of feedback. Might be from the command, I'm not sure.
Hello. Are you hearing feedback from me?
Hello? Not anymore? No. That's fine. This is on the dropping a hun the urn. So in 1995, I smashed an antique urn. He had become fascinated with China's traditional heritage that Mao tried to wipe out during the Cultural Revolution. He would visit antique markets, gathering items that he learned from Duchamp could be presented as them. So 2,000-year-old urns in the Han Dynasty, creating what was still one of his most provocative works. The artist photographed himself dropping one. Goodness gracious.
I did hear him say about this, actually, that he didn't want people to be clinging onto the past, and it was a problem.
Interesting. That is certainly a provocative image. The idea of shattering history. But also it's, in a way, it's the idea that during Mao's Cultural Revolution, the idea of wiping out traditional heritage, he's sort of reliving that in some way and showing that through this piece of art.
Good point, yeah.
He's not only making his own point that we can't hang on to the past, but also in this showing almost reliving what he saw as an act of evil of shattering the past. So I'm not exactly sure which one it is here. Interesting. The bird's nest. Yes, so he actually designed the stadium.
I recall reading somewhere that he and his family lived through Mao's Cultural Revolution.
Yes. Yes, that would have made sense. He salvaged pillars and beams of Tieli, Chinese ironwood, from demolished Qing dynasty temples, worked with carpenters to create a structure of poles with linking arms. They mark out the borders of the map from China. There's a lot of symbolism in his work.
Yes.
Wooden doors salvaged from Ming and Qing dynasty houses have been demolished to make way for new development.
Yeah. It's not quite it's not quite the aesthetic image of the art. Well, I mean, there's kind of some of that, but it's more interpretive. The meaning lies for the person viewing the art to interpret it. That's to define that hidden meaning.
Okay. So this idea that is leaving up the interpretation to the person necessarily saying this is what it means.
Yeah. There is some...
Yeah, I'm looking at these pieces here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm having a hard time making a direct connection between and the political message he's trying to send. It seems like the art pieces are just kind of a way of drawing.
Well, each one of them does have a little blurb next to it, which is drawing some sort of connection. This one here is meant to be his response to the Sichuan earthquake of 2008.
Yes, but without that blurb, there would be no context. If we were just looking at that piece of art, we wouldn't really know.
It's like he wants it to speak for itself, but you have to know the context.
Yeah.
I think that's also quite interesting that it's.
Oh, do you happen to have
if he's overtly saying what it is, that could get into more trouble? Or given that he's already got an introduction, retain some element of mystery.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't it mentioned before about him having an art piece listing the names of the victims that the CCP wouldn't release publicly? Do we have a shot of that somewhere?
Yeah. Let's see if I can. Let me scroll down to see how I can find it. Oh, this is from his time in detention. This is quite realistic.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Forever bicycles. Let's see if we can get.
Ran out of social
finding such list. No, there's no mention of it here.
Mm.
But all besides, let's see what this one's about. The work demonstrates the influence of Duchamp on I's work and continued exploration of the cultural values of China expressed through everyday objects.
Wow.
There are quite a lot of everyday objects, pieces of driftwood, well, not driftwood, sorry, iron tree, not driftwood, the use of sunflower seeds.
Perhaps as a perhaps as a representation for the common people, or like, for instance, the peasants and like the lower classes of China.
Highly sure, but I'm leaning towards either an eye or a particularly cantankerous SEI. But
I was leaning more to IEI. I was thinking SEI earlier on, but I don't quite see the SI taking more of a priority for him than the NI.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I think that's right. Let's see. Here's something which he's written himself. The artwork that made me the most dangerous person in China. That's not something an SEI is going to be saying. In 2009, the distant artist created a work to honor the thousands of children who died in the Sichuan earthquake. He recalls how the project remembering angered China's rule and changed his career forever. I trained as an artist in New York, but I never really knew how my art would function in the so-called art world. I didn't feel part of it, and nobody was interested in me. Then in 2008, after I moved back to China, Sichuan had an earthquake. It was devastating. More than 80,000 lives disappeared. Many of the dead were young people at school, university. I've been writing a daily blog about modern Chinese society, the government, and art. But I stopped suddenly. People asked me why, but facing such a tragedy, I was silent. I couldn't find the right vocabulary. So even then, he was writing a blog about the government. And the Chinese government censored and controlled all the information about the earthquake, so people didn't know the details of what really happened. I wanted to know how many students lost their lives. Schools built by the state are supposed to be very secure. They should not collapse. Hundreds of phone calls to the education department, the police, the civil departments, asked questions about the student casualties. Of course, nobody would talk to me. This is an investigation team. My blog, I said, this is my question. Where are those lives? A lot of the young people began following me intensively online. Soon had a team of 100 people, went out to the crisis area, to the ruins of the earthquake, knocked on doors, and made requested simple names, date of birth. Over the months, members of our team were arrested many times. Police would confiscate their belongings, delete the names. The government shut off the blog because there were too many people reading it. A show came up in Munich, decided to cover their Haus der Kunst museums. Facade with one of it wanted to let the world remember she had been living happily for 7 years. The work of all our social and political investigations was about how in Chinese society, with censorship and control, individuals can still take action to defend their very, very fragile rights. And it is a sort of non-violent protest in a way, which also reminds me a bit of Gandhi. It's not some sort of anything physical. At the same time, he probably couldn't do anything physical because the power of the Chinese government is so much. But it is certainly stirring them up and provoking them to doing more things to him, which he then turns into more art.
He did at one point. There was a camera guy on him, and he hired his own camera guy to watch that camera guy, and he went up right in front of him. Very provoking, yeah.
I've made many other works relating to the Sichuan earthquake, but this one had a real life tragedy, the human condition, civil rights, and embodiment of my passion and imagination. If I hadn't engaged with that tragedy, I would not be the artist I am today. I cannot imagine I still be making art if I wasn't reflecting my political views. I think that's very clear. That his art is polemic.
Yeah.
I'm interested in ideas, how to conceptualize them, create a language, and find possibilities. Those matter to me more than the final object. My work is about my life, my consciousness, my sensitivity, and my skill in dealing with different matters. This is especially true of remembering, which had a huge impact on my subsequent output. Overall, I'm thinking the AI makes the most sense.
Same.
Sorry, I just got very quickly sort one thing out. Hang on a second, I'll be back in just a minute.
So is your video working now?
My video is working fine. It's just the sound quality goes in and out. Like for about a few seconds at a time, I get clear audio feed and I can understand what everyone's saying perfectly. And then I just get massive distortion and I can hardly make out anything. It's just really robotic sounding, distortion. And makes it very hard to follow the conversation. So right now I've just been trying to read along with the article since I can barely make out what Jack is trying to say.
But you can read it okay?
If I just blow up the screen that he has up on there for the moment. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Just had to attend to a matter. Okay, so I think AI. Does everyone else think AI or something else?
I think AI works.
Well, yeah, the little bit of information that I was able to glean, he's definitely like force valuing, but very hard to follow. I wouldn't object to AI at this point. I just wish I could have heard a little bit more of the interview and the discussion back and forth.
Let's see more of the interview. Some people are suggesting maybe EIE. I'm wondering about making sure we can narrow down any other possibilities with him.
Well, he's very composed in language. It's not the sort of energy I would expect. Well, he is older.
That is true.
There is still a calmness and more of a subtle emotionality.
Let me see if I can find another interview, maybe one of him younger, if there is any. Let me see if I can find something.
That'd be interesting.
I know there's a 60 Minutes article or not article, but video. That's pretty good, but it's like 10 minutes.
A 60 Minutes article?
Or 60 Minutes, a YouTube video.
Okay.
It's kind of provocative
60,
too.
you mean the show 60 Minutes or the video was 60 minutes long?
No, the show 60 Minutes has like a 10-minute, I think, video.
Okay.
Why would they do that?
Okay.
I don't know.
They have to keep it consistent and make it 60 minutes.
Yeah.
60 Minutes rewind.
It's just a lie.
Ai Weiwei is China's most famous political dissident, a provocateur and a troublemaker whose clashes with the Chinese government have gotten him harassed by police, thrown in jail, and driven out of the country. He's also one of the most successful contemporary artists in the world, a designer, sculptor, photographer, and blogger who's earned legions of followers by using his art as a weapon to ridicule the authorities. And we should warn you, some of his work can be offensive. But when you meet Ai Weiwei, he's soft-spoken, self-deprecating, and shy. The last person to be an enemy of the state. They thought your intention was to subvert state power.
Which is true.
Which is true. You want to bring down the Chinese government.
Not bring down, but I don't think I have the power to bring it down.
But you want it to change.
Yes, of course.
Those are dangerous words in China, where even after decades of modernization, the government has little tolerance for dissent. But that's never bothered Ai Weiwei. This is the work he's perhaps most famous for. What you're seeing in the background is a portrait of China's revered former dictator, Mao Zedong, part of a series in which Weiwei gives the finger to other symbols of power around the world.
Just like this, yeah?
Are we creating a new Ai Weiwei as we stand here?
It's so easy, everybody can do it.
Easy, certainly not subtle, and maybe a little silly. But the Chinese authorities took them very seriously. They thought it was subversive. Why was the regime frightened of art?
because they are afraid of freedom. And art is about freedom.
They're afraid of freedom.
Yes.
Are you an artist or are you an activist?
I think an artist and activist is the same thing. As an artist, you always have to be an activist.
You have to be political to be a good artist.
I think every art, if it's relevant, is political.
That's the purpose of his life.
Evan Osnos is a writer.
Well, that's certainly something.
Jeez. Not SEI.
No.
No.
I think I'm pretty sure of a beta and F here, and I'm leaning more IEI, I would say.
Well, the L is blocked with F here.
Yes, I think so. Also, you see freedom coming up a number of times, and there's freedom of speech is there, I think, as a symbol of this greater idea of freedom. But he doesn't talk about the practicalities of freedom. So, well, I can't move around, I can't do this, I can't do that. I like some more independence. Or he's not bringing it in any of that sense. It's more of the idea of freedom. The freedom as some sort of idea.
Abstract, yeah.
Yes, it's in the abstract. No, I think I probably makes the most sense here. And yes, he's quite soft-spoken. He doesn't have a sort of more confrontational presence, but he does do art which provokes, which leads people to do things to him, which then boosts his own image. Almost that is quite Gandhi-esque.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think that's Ai Weiwei down. Let's look at another person on our list. So who do we have on the list? We had, should we look at Cao Cao next?
Sure.
Okay, let's see if we can find anything on Cao Cao. Maybe there's something YouTube-y on Cao Cao.
He's a past historical figure.
Here's something.
We'd find something in the way of a documentary or something short, maybe.
Yes. Invicta, that should be good. I looked at some Invicta stuff before. I think it's some good work on historical battles on warlords.
Yeah. Warlords of the Three Kingdoms, Cao Cao. This video was made possible by our sponsor, Creative Assembly, and their new game, Total War Three Kingdoms. Cao Cao was a general from northeastern China who emerged victorious from the scrum of warlords who had been fighting for a piece of the fracturing Han Empire in the late 2nd century. His legacy was the formation of the Kingdom of Wei, one of the three kingdoms to succeed the Han, and the one which would ultimately reunite the realm under the Jin dynasty. Cao Cao's prolific career was a result of his ruthless but...
Video's paused. While it's loading, JB, could you... what do you know about Cao Cao that maybe you could share with us?
I know he was a general and a poet, and he was... he had some political pull during, I think, the Eastern Han, which is around 200 AD. He was known for helping create this new kind of poetry. And I read one of his poems, and it was about war, obviously. And he kept bringing up different little sensory things. He's you can see the bones open in the air, and there's fleas in the soldier's armor, and all of these different things. And by the end of the poem, he's it breaks my heart, is what he says, which I thought was really interesting. But he has this kind of war mind, but also, I guess, poetic.
And inner sensitivity.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's watch a little bit more of this.
Efficient action. He is immortalized in the novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms as a Machiavellian schemer and has come to be seen today as the Darth Vader of Chinese culture, the ultimate villain. Cao Cao was born in the year 155 in the county of Qiao under a still united Han Empire. He was a part of the well-connected Xiahou clan and would have the good fortune of being adopted by Cao Teng, a powerful eunuch in the Han court. At the age of 20, Cao Cao entered government. He was appointed district captain of Luoyang, the imperial capital. The young man quickly developed a reputation as a strict enforcer of the law. Once, he even had an uncle of a powerful eunuch flogged to death, as the law prescribed, because the man broke curfew and was walking the streets at night. Thanks to his connections, though, Cao Cao was immune from retaliation and would even be promoted. At 22, he became governor of the county of Dunqiu, but was dismissed a year later in 178 and moved back to Qiao. In 180, he would be recalled to the imperial capital to serve as a court consultant. From here, Cao Cao would closely observe the inner workings of power and warned against the growing influence of the eunuchs, but to little effect. In 184, the Yellow Turban Rebellion broke out. Its flames engulfed much of eastern China and threatened to bring down the empire. Armies were raised and commanders dispatched to deal with the threat. Cao Cao was named captain of the cavalry and sent to deal with uprisings in a part of present-day Henan province. He was successful, and so was sent to another region to deal with the rebellion there. He launched an aggressive campaign of suppressing unsanctioned religions, even smashing local shrines. For his success, he was offered a promotion, but he worried that he had offended local elites and court eunuchs with his harsh campaign, so he turned it down and went home, claiming illness.
Interesting.
In 189,
so we see certainly quite a confident use of force there, but also an awareness of potential threats and how to navigate that, or in this case, actually pretending to be ill to get out of retaliation.
There was some. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Go on.
Oh, I was just. This is a little different, but there was some story I read about how he got his uncle into trouble once because he himself threw this big fit, and his dad came over and was like, "What's wrong?" And he like blamed his uncle for doing something to him when he didn't. You know, so he's like trying to get the people around him in trouble.
Okay, so could cause mischief, but also can enforce the law quite brutally, and was not religiously tolerant. Imposed imposed power over different shrines and other religious artifacts, which wasn't necessarily useful for the pragmatics of war. It was more ideological.
It almost seemed like he was just fulfilling the law, like the law mattered that much.
Yes. Okay.
Emperor Lingdi died. The question of his succession precipitated a power struggle in the imperial capital. Chaos ensued as court eunuchs seized control and assassinated the regent marshal, only to themselves be killed by loyalist officers. The power vacuum was exploited by the frontier general Dong Zhuo, who now used his army to take the capital and the emperor captive. Cao Cao was offered a promotion, but refused to side with the usurper and fled. During his flight, Cao Cao is said to have stopped at the home of an old friend of his father's. While there, he mistakenly thought that the man's sons were preparing to betray him and decided that he would strike first. He killed them all, only to realize his mistake after the horrific act. Legends state that he excused his actions by saying, "I would rather betray the world than let the world betray me." This quote has become a defining characteristic in the popular perception of Cao Cao.
That is very interesting. He didn't have a lack of confidence in how people's intentions and motivations towards him, but a proactivity in acting to preemptively to take people out.
Yeah, that's already kind of implied a weaker T as well. You know, sort of impulsiveness and not even just that, but not really being able to consider like alternative possibilities for why that might not be the case, like sticking with the most sticking with the worst case scenario.
Paranoia.
Yeah.
Yes. There's also the fact that he refused to side with the emperor. There is a certain range of principles there. He's not unprincipled.
Yeah.
And it's in a way where because you are an usurper to the throne, you do not belong in that position. I'm not going to side with you. It's not necessarily a personal judgment.
Yeah.
Okay, let's watch a little bit more.
On returning home, he helped organize a coalition against Dong Zhuo. Cao Cao and a number of provincial officials raised forces to retake the capital Luoyang. The coalition forced Dong Zhuo to move the capital west, but ultimately ended in failure as the campaign slowed to a halt and then dissolved due to infighting among the various warlords. Cao Cao would return to his province, but like many others, kept up his arms. For the moment, he focused on pressing matters nearer to home by taking on the remaining elements of the Yellow Turban Rebellion. The general successfully defeated a huge group of rebels in Qing province. Ever the clever thinker, he would incorporate large numbers of the surrendered soldiers into his own ranks, thus bolster the forces at Cao Cao's disposal were now formidable.
So pragmatic
In
and a very good
word came that Dong Zhuo had been
tactician.
assassinated, and in 196, further news reported that Emperor Xian was on the run from the tyrant's former lieutenants. Seizing the opportunity, Cao Cao quickly came to the emperor's rescue. This move would prove pivotal to his career, as the emperor and the capital were moved to Cao Cao's base of power in the city of Xuchang. No longer some errant warlord, Cao Cao was now officially acting on the authority of the emperor. This gave him a great deal of legitimacy in his continuing campaigns against other factions. Among the many forces struggling for control of the area were the famous generals Lu Bu, Liu Bei, and Yuan Shao. Over the years, they would interact in a shifting game of allegiances. This was the perfect environment for Cao Cao's cunning plans. He would begin by taking out Lu Bu. Together with Liu Bei, they would defeat the famous warrior at the Battle of Xiapi and see him executed. However,
so we also see here, it's not necessarily strategic, it's far more tactical. It's where can I get an advantage in this particular situation? And he comes into his own through his quick response in saving the emperor, then establishing control over the emperor and using him as a voice of legitimacy.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a lot of extroverted sensation here.
Yes.
And also some extroverted logic in terms of taking these men and using them in there pragmatically to bolster his own army.
Yeah.
However, soon these allies would turn on each other. The emperor was increasingly wary of his protector's ambitions and secretly ordered that Cao Cao be removed. Liu Bei joined the conspiracy to assassinate Cao Cao, but the plot was uncovered. The ringleaders and their families were executed, but Liu Bei, who had already left the capital, escaped with his life. Cao Cao pursued his betrayer to Xu province. The vengeful general managed to defeat Liu Bei's forces, forcing him to seek shelter with Yuan Shao to the north. Cao Cao was relentless in his campaigning and made ready to now fight with his last major opponent. At the time, Yuan Shao was the most powerful warlord. The two would clash in a series of battles, culminating in the famous Battle of Guandu in the year 200. Here, Cao Cao managed to use superior tactics and a better trained force to defeat a much larger opponent. Though Yuan Shao would live to fight another day, he was greatly weakened and would die 2 years later. Cao Cao finished mopping up the remains of Yuan Shao's former territory, and by 207, he controlled the northern half of the empire. But his ambitions would not stop there. In 208, Cao Cao made ready to reclaim the remaining territories of the former Han Empire. His first thrust would be south across the Yangtze River. This was initially a stunning success, and the entire Jing province was taken without any resistance. However, his rivals Liu Bei and Sun Quan were preparing to make a stand at the Yangtze River.
So I think I've probably seen enough. Have you guys seen enough?
I've seen definitely enough, yeah.
Okay, I think. What do you think, Jamie?
Well, he's very clearly force valuing. I'm trying to pinpoint where the R is exactly. I think that's where I'm a little confused. Like I can see the TE, right?
Yeah.
So I would guess, like my guess right now is like SEE, maybe.
Okay. What do you think, Deb?
I was thinking SLE. I thought that was very clear straight away. Even I think my argument against SEE is that there's really little sign of him having a evaluating his own pragmatic and Machiavellian tactics on a personal basis. It's on principles, but principles that will lead him to the best advantage. which really makes him a superior tactician almost in a sense, but also quite an efficient statesman in some sense. But also there is more not a complete rejection of the law and putting it on the basis of his or individuals he personally trusts, but really a flexible manipulation of it, so it works well for him. So I'm more inclined to think that it's really more of a strong and contact logic, really, than it being weak.
It does seem to me that where R is being talked about, it's either him being more Machiavellian in controlling people, or else distrusting people, thinking that they might turn against him at any moment, and so he'll need to preempt, or indeed being betrayed. I'm not seeing any sort of skillful creation of relationships where, you know, if you help me, I'll help you, and maintaining that. Instead, what I do see is a certain respect for legitimate authority in the emperor and understanding how to use that to his advantage, turning against the usurper for being a usurper rather than a sort of more personal judgment. I think is more of an introverted logic rationale. The use of extroverted logic is also there. He seems to be both pragmatic while also recognizing legitimate authority, and combining that with no real sign, in my opinion, of a strong use of introverted ethics. I can see why SLE probably makes the most sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess I'm trying to reconcile like what I read in his poetry versus this, because he comes off a little different.
Let's take a look at his poetry, because I think that's a very interesting side.
Well, I mean, I think the sensitivity of SLEs in general, it's really more hidden underneath. They have a tough like exterior, but I mean, if you look at the writing of, say, like Ernest Hemingway, there are certainly some heartfelt musings in there, sort of, but it's not really something that you would really get from him that would be like out in the open. He's not like an open book.
If that's true, though, how do we type authors based off of their work solely? Because we do that with some people, right? So how do we figure that out?
Let's see if I can find this poem. Now, I think that SLEs can show an inner sensitivity. So it's a question of what exactly is being discussed in these poems.
I can message you some of the poems that I snipped if you want.
Let's get it up. Let's put on the share screen and we can discuss it. Hang on. Sorry, I got my sister standing in front of me. Hang on a second. Let's see. Jamie, if you could actually put it in the private chat on here, that could be useful. Or I can turn on Facebook and have a look.
Oh, okay. To polar, I'm sorry.
That's okay,
Figure this
on the
out.
right, private chat.
Yeah. Well, it's pictures is what I have. I took like snips of his poetry. That's the problem.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's take a look. Let's see.
And I messaged it to you, but.
Okay, let me read it out. So, Guangdong had many righteous people who rose in arms to fight gangs of criminals. When they first converged at Menjin, their hearts were set at Shenyang. Troops gathered, but their strength scattered. They hesitated like geese in flight. People are prone to struggle for power. Soon they began to slaughter each other. Yuan Shu claimed the throne at the south. Yuan Shao carved the imperial seal at the north. Fleas grow inside the soldier's armor. Common folk die by the tens of thousands. White bones are exposed in the wilderness. Within 1,000 li, no cock crow is heard. Survivors number 1 out of 100. Thinking of this breaks one's heart.
Oh, yeah. One observation.
Yeah.
The structure of the poem or the snippet is very much about like not a whole sensory experience, but sensory like snapshots of like one thing to the next. There's a clear line of division there, and it's not like quite entirely pleasant either. So it's like what he's immediately experiencing in the moment. There is a romantic element there about like war and the misfortune surrounding it, but nothing really like relationally like about like a specific person or like how he feels about it. It seems like this very general emotional state about the war and its conditions.
Yes. It's like all this loss of life makes me feel sorrow.
Yeah.
Do you think it could be like a beta awareness in that he's a part of this group, like this army, and he's sad that the group is affected? You know, like it's not necessarily an individual that.
Yeah, that
it can be. But what I think is worth noting is that there have been other SLEs who have been both figures of great power who also have turned to poetry as a hobby. I think of, for instance, Henry VIII. Someone who did poetry, who composed his fort, but he even composed Greensleeves. So there's something which SLEs can and have done as well. And it could be a means of actually showing, I'm making an emotional appeal here. I'm getting people to feel sad about what's been lost. You know, we've won this big battle, but also people have died. Let me share something of that, of my own sorrow in this. And so you can also, whether it's a question of weeping with me, you know, it's communicating that. It's not really dealing with individuals. It's dealing with the overall loss of life in this battle.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily valuing the individual perspective. So I wouldn't rule out extroverted ethics from this.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah. Okay. I think SLE makes sense then.
Okay.
Let's. Oh, hang on. What's this?
You can ignore it. It was just another poem.
Okay. Is it one which adds anything new? Should you examine it as well?
Just that alcohol can help you soothe your pain. That's about it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Captain Obvious.
Okay. Let's take a look then at. Oh, who should we look at? Mengji?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. See a bit of Mengji.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Walker. I teach philosophy and humanities at Yale and US College in Singapore. Today, I'm going to take a look at Mengzi's views on human nature. In particular, I'm going to take a look at Mengzi's defense of the claim that human nature is good. Mengzi, also known as Mencius, was an early Confucian philosopher. He lived in the 300 BCE. Like Confucius, Mengzi was concerned to defend a certain conception of the good life for human beings. Call this conception of the good life the Confucian way, or the Confucian Tao. According to the Confucian way, possessing virtues like benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom are central to a life well lived. When Mengzi says that human nature is good, Mengzi's thought is that human beings have innate potentials or predispositions toward such virtues. We naturally tend toward these virtues. As Mengzi says, benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom are not welded to us externally. We inherently have them. In presenting this view, Mengzi uses an agricultural metaphor. He describes these potentials and predispositions as sprouts of virtue. Mengzi, in turn, locates these sprouts of virtue in the heart, or heart-mind, which Mengzi identifies as the seat of our cognitive and affective dispositions. Mengzi's thought is that if we fully cultivate our sprouts, if we tend to our predispositions toward virtue and become fully virtuous, then we will bring our human nature to full fruition. We will flourish as human beings. But what evidence does Mengzi adduce for the view that human nature is good? On what basis, in other words, does Mengzi think that we have such predispositions toward benevolence, righteousness, and the like? Here, I want to take a look at one of the most famous arguments in the Mengzi. It appears in Mengzi 2a6. Like some other famous...
So, already, what impressions are people getting?
Oh, me?
Yeah, either of you. What do you think so far?
I think there is almost a good grasp of like I think there's like a good grasp of like intuition and like concepts of like an abstract idea of what exactly human nature is like, and even being able to present a cohesive argument on that topic. But the topic of the argument is really more of it is an R, the domain, really about the question of people possessing these good virtues, but it's not purely fixed. It's a potential that is to be realized, which I had thought a little bit about. Maybe my initial impression was delta NF, but I'm not entirely sure yet.
How about you, Jamie? Any thoughts?
Currently I'm thinking potentially SI valuing. I know he's someone who believes that people are innately good. He's really attached to Confucianism, obviously, and there's a story, I guess that I'll share, where if let's say your dad murders someone, in order to be a good Confucian, you would protect your dad. You wouldn't turn him into the state.
Yeah.
So I think the idea of him valuing R makes sense too, if he's in line with that.
I know that I think in the past we have typed Confucius as an EII, and of course there is the question of, is that something which is Mengzi, is he simply just following Confucianism and the principles set forth by that, or is it something which he is originating?
So I know that he actually studied with Confucius's grandson, I think, and it was his mother, like Mengzi's mother, is known as being like the best mother ever because she created such a good-hearted human. Like, there's something to that.
Okay. Okay, let's watch a little bit more of this video to see what else we can get.
Arguments in the history of philosophy. It involves a thought experiment. I'll call Mengzi's thought experiment the child and the well case. Ladies and gentlemen, meet little Ria. Suppose that little Ria is toddling right along through this field. And suppose further that she's heading obliviously right toward this scary looking well. There's the well, there's little Ria toddling along, getting closer. I guess I should add that what you saw was only a dramatization. According to Mengzi, anyone who saw little Ria about to toddle into that well would have an immediate, non-reflective gut reaction. As Mengzi says in 2a6, anyone would feel a surge of alarm and compassion. Indeed, simply imagining the child in the well case vividly to yourselves, you might feel something of this alarm. Okay, so what should we conclude from Mengzi's child and the well thought experiment? According to Mengzi, our non-reflective gut reaction to little Ria's looming danger shows that we have innate predispositions for benevolence. On Mengzi's view, our response to little Ria's potential disaster is hardwired. Human beings, by nature, are simply predisposed to respond with alarm and compassion when they see defenseless innocents about to face harm. And our alarm and compassion, Mengzi insists, reveals the sprout of benevolence in human nature. To be sure, it doesn't show that we possess the fully developed virtue of benevolence, but Mengzi thinks that it reveals the germ or bud of benevolence, a kind of proto-version of benevolence that can be cultivated to maturity.
I'm definitely seeing the valued extrovert intuition and introvert sensation in this. I'm not yet certain of I'm not really convinced of delta yet. I could see a lot of arguments for alpha in this. There's generalized example of human nature, but people are inherently good. It's very de-individualized. And well, let's see some of his some stuff from Wikipedia, which maybe could help. This is just a philosophical argument. Or is there anything actually biographical on YouTube we can find? Anyway.
Oh, I do have this too written down. Chief among his basic tenets was an emphasis on the obligation of rulers to provide for the common people.
Okay. Let's look at this Wikipedia. Hang on a second. Let me share this. Okay. So he's been described as a second sage, that is after only Confucius himself. During the Warring States period, he said to much of his life traveling around China, offering counsel to different rulers. Conversations with his rulers formed the basis of Mencius, which would later be canonized as a Confucian classic. You've seen this already. Cultivation of his inherent goodness. They are subordinate to the masses. That is interesting. That's a rejection of extroverted sensation there, I would say.
I did read something about him being kind of feudalist too, where if someone had all of their home needs met, like that's most important, so people can eat and not have to worry about it.
I would also add that in the product of the time, since it was like pretty much in that antiquity type of era, we didn't really have this idea beyond like feudalism in that sense. People had that conception of what worked best for the people, even if there wasn't, even if they didn't know that a better system may have existed. But there is still the focus on well-being or sensory well-being in that sense.
Yes.
So you're saying it's a cultural thing, in your opinion, or
partially?
Okay.
Not entirely.
Main concepts. So he did not explicitly focus on the subject of human nature. He said the innate goodness of the individual, believing it was society's influence, its lack of a positive cultivating influence that caused bad moral character. He who exerts his mind to the utmost knows his nature, and the way of learning is none other than finding the lost mind. It's an emphasis on reflectiveness there. To show innate goodness, use example of a child falling down the well. Yep. Okay. According to Mencius, education must awaken the innate abilities of the human mind. He denounced memorization and advocated active interrogation of a text. One who believes all of a book will be better off without books.
He's got some major Mr. Rogers vibes.
One should check for internal consistency by comparing sections and debate the probability of factual accounts by comparing them with experience. So some internal consistency there. And this idea that it's society which makes people bad. People themselves aren't bad, don't actually necessarily have bad natures. In a way, that's almost a rejection of aspects of introverted ethics.
Maybe it could be demonstrative. Do you think?
Yeah, reading a bit more of this, I think I'm starting to see where you get alpha from. I actually have like a couple types in mind, but I'm not entirely sure yet.
He believed in the power of destiny in shaping the roles of human beings in society. Whereas destiny cannot be contrived by the human intellect or foreseen. Destiny is shown when a path arises that both unforeseen and constructive. Destiny should not be confused with fate. He denied that heaven would protect a person regardless of his actions, saying, one who understands destiny will not stand beneath a tottering wall. The proper path is one which is natural and unforced. This path must also be maintained because unused pathways are covered with weeds. One who follows destiny will live a long and successful life. One who rebels against destiny will die before his time. That's interesting, that it's something which is different to fate. It's not necessarily something which must happen, but there's some sort of natural unfolding.
Yeah, it sounds very Taoist in terms of you go with the flow, you don't fight your way through.
Yeah. I personally, I'm thinking a alpha integrator. I'm not set on which one. I could see a good argument for SEI. I could see maybe LII as well.
Yeah, the problem is he's more of an ancient figure, so we would, if that would be the case, let's look for evidence of either E or I.
Yes.
I'm thinking based on like some of the video there, it was of course a valuing of I. It could be the case that his I and T are balanced, but
there's also the thought experiment in question is also very just relating to people in just the common reactions people have in a real life situation. It's not too abstracted. It's considering, if you see a baby falling into a well, you're going to be shocked about it. You're going to try to help them. That's a natural response. And it's very rooted in a very much a real, feeling that people do have. There isn't much there. It's actually very abstracted.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think that's well, first indicative that E is blocked with S. You know that the emotions in the body are primarily connected. It's part of that. I just think that we may need more evidence here.
I think we probably could do more evidence. At the moment, I'm favouring SEI over the alternatives, but I don't think we have enough to have a really confident typing yet.
Yeah, it's reasonable.
Well, there's anything else I can find. Let me just type this in, see what we get. Let's see.
I have this quote. Let's see. He said, "Persons who have developed their hearts and minds to the utmost know their nature. Knowing their nature, they know heaven." And someone was talking about how he believed in personal cultivation and developing one's mind.
Although it's a question of what exactly that means in developing one's mind.
Right.
Because it is like just seemed like sort of like the idea of just growing and flourishing in sort of a plant-like way. I'm not sure. It could just be general introvert sensation again.
I strongly identify, but
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. Don Patrick in the mentions, and the book shows us a brilliant, volatile, charismatic, irritating, self-righteous man.
Wow.
Whose intellectual insights can be so keen, whose influence is still felt in China today, and whose self-justifying rationalizations can be so intellectually facile as to undermine the integrity of his central philosophy. The contradictions in his person, lapses in his conduct, signal that his textual persona was not an invention of others. He seemed to be reading a real man. And even that sounds a bit SEI, in my opinion.
I was gonna say, is his conflictor writing this or something?
Could be, but it's not the sort of thing you imagine an LII being described as.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that is pretty good evidence for SEI. I think definitely, I can definitely see it now. Yeah. I just wasn't totally sure because based on the article and the introductory video, it was like, oh, this is a person who's really good at abstractions and coming up with different concepts. But I mean, SEIs can be good at that through their L, the mobilizing. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, I think it goes back to using the concrete in order to ideate, like a reliance on that. I feel like I do that too.
And also that we thought he might be a delta and F because there was some sort of sign of R in this emphasis on relationships, this appreciation of Confucius. That could also apply to demonstrative function, and his L doesn't seem to be quite especially strong or nuanced either, I would say.
Well, I think it's good that we found another. There are definitely SEI philosophers out there,
yeah,
and definitely good to have another one. I think.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next person. Who is the next person? I need to actually look at the list. Where is the list?
I think it's Xi Jinping.
Oh, Jinping. Yes, let's take a look at Xi Jinping. That is a very important one.
Yeah.
Right.
Calling him a honey bear now, so I can get arrested by the government.
Right. Are there any? Let's see if there's any interviews with Xi Jinping. That's probably not going to be very helpful. Let's see what we can find. An enlightening talk with President Xi Jinping.
Prepare to be enlightened.
在讨论的过程当中啊，我重点向总书记汇报了一下赤峰市推进脱贫攻坚工作的一些
That's not Xi Jinping.
做和思考的总书记一些
消除绝对贫困，又不能把胃口吊得太高。
这样一个要求。
Okay, no, that's not going to be very helpful. Let's go to something else.
It feels like propaganda.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're a little behind, but that's mainly because President Xi and I had a very constructive conversation.
That's not going to be helpful either.
Just yeah. Obama. It takes forever between the long pauses. The interview will take forever.
Yes. Here we go.
Its own road for development. President Xi Jinping voiced his confidence that reform and opening up remain the country's path to continued growth. He noted that it wasn't an easy task, with a nation of a population of 1.3 billion, roll out bolder measures. Nearly a year into and showed that calling his visit to Russia.
For goodness sake, that's not going to be helpful either. Exclusive interview with Putin. No, that's not who we want.
I mean, I jotted down some things I could bring up if.
Yeah,
that could be helpful. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's something from BBC News. Maybe this can work.
One of the world's most powerful men has arrived in London tonight.
Ooh.
China's President Xi Jinping and his celebrity wife Peng Liyuan. For all the warmth of the greetings, big questions hang over this state visit. But the business community is enthusiastic.
Good political relations naturally trickle down to more open policies, to closer friendships, closer relationships, and we think that that will catalyse more trade and investment between the UK and
China. Red flags, red carpets, China's favourite colour. President Xi expects the most royal of welcomes in London, and Prince William was doing his bit, controversial. It'll bring Chinese companies into hearing, like many local people, and about.
Why is it no one actually wants to talk about Xi Jinping?
Well, I will say one thing. He's very good. He's very good at controlling his image, I believe.
Yes. We talked about even how he dyes his hair to look a certain way because he doesn't want to look too old, even.
Yeah.
They're very controlled.
Yeah, very controlled.
Yeah. I found an interesting article. It says getting to know the real Xi Jinping could mean preventing a conflict. Tom Plate says the Chinese president is not as humorless, as vain, or as aggressive as Westerners have been led to believe. Okay. Let's see. The irony was that Lee was no, hang on, this is not the same person. Hang on. Which brings us to the personality of Xi Jinping. Compared to what we know of our witless US president, the West knows little about China's president. Ignorance breeds speculation. She is allegedly power mad, for example, a DNA Napoleon in ambition, and perhaps most creepily of all, has almost no sense of humor. See, for example, the dismissive remarks in Harvard, Professor Roderick McFarquhar's recent article in the New York Review of Books. But if you troll Chinese language, social media, and other venues, a nuanced view emerges. Examples not hard to find. My favorite Xi Whiz moment came during a presumably dreadfully boring conference on the presumably fast declining water quality of a lake in Jiangsu, once a popular vacation spot. Breaking into a dreary presentation on new policies for the lake, a presumably bored Xi Jinping interrupted to say wryly, "We can determine the water quality by whether our mayors want to swim there." He once got a light dig and laugh out of former US President Barack Obama, saying, "I met your wife Michelle, mother-in-law, and daughter Sasha in Beijing. When Michelle was about to leave, she asked me to formally convey to you her best regards." The leader of China even made droll fun of his mainland tourists. "When our citizens go overseas, they need to be more civilized. Don't litter their bottled water, don't destroy others' coral reefs, eat less instant noodles, and have more local seafood." So quite a dry sense of humor.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Jamie, what were you going to say?
I just wrote up some bits of things I could say, I guess.
Okay.
Let's see. He has reportedly taken a hard line on security issues as well as foreign affairs, rejecting a more nationalistic and assertive China on the world stage. His political program calls for a China more united and confident of its own value system and political structure. He has a bit of a personality cult. Like, some people have compared him actually to Mao Zedong.
A bit is an understatement.
An understatement. He demolished that. You have a certain term as president, but he demolished it within a few years ago, I think, so that he could potentially be the leader forever.
Yes.
Which was a big deal.
That is quite big. So that I can see why people think he may be quite power mad if he's done that.
Yeah. He did say this. Let's see. Fat in January, thin in February, half dead in March and April. We say a sword is made on a grinding stone, and man is forged in hardship.
So that suggests also some valuation of extroverted sensation, perhaps.
Yeah.
Placed. So it's quite a cult personality. People in Jiangxi province, they told Christians to replace their pictures of Jesus with Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
The political ideology bearing his name was enshrined in the Constitution. What is this political ideology? Let's see.
Prepare to get red-pilled.
A set of policies and ideals derived from the Chinese Communist Party's General Secretary Xi Jinping. Let's take a look. As described before, as part of a broad framework created around a term coined by Deng Xiaoping, which places China in the primary stage of socialism in the official party documentation. Marxism-Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, Deng Xiaoping theory. That was continuing everything. Doesn't seem to be having that much of a different route. But what is okay? Here's the content: ensuring Communist Party of China leadership over all forms of work in China. Okay, the Communist Party of China should take a people-centric approach for public interest, the continuation of comprehensive deepening of reforms, adopting new science-based ideas for innovative, coordinated, green, open, and shared development. Following socialism of Chinese characteristics with people as the masters of the country. Okay. Practice socialist core values. strengthen national security, establish a common destiny between Chinese people and the other people around the world with a peaceful international environment. One country, two systems. I'm not sure if it's a coherent ideology. It's basically, again, it's 14 different policies, some which harks back to pre-existing ideology. Nothing particularly groundbreaking.
What's interesting is he was supposedly the compromise candidate. Like, he wasn't supposed to have ever become president. He just kind of made his way up.
I see. Now, was that because he didn't piss anyone off?
From what I read, it just seemed like he knew the right people to talk to.
Okay. Interesting. So it's a question of relationship forming?
I don't know if they had enough info, but it could be. I mean, it seems like it's odd because he'll write a lot about how, like, oh, we're for the people and we need to make sure our people are good. But then when you look at all the human rights violations, it's like, well, do you really believe that?
Yeah. Fair. Let's see. Quotes about. She is systematically undermining virtually every feature that made China so distinct and helped it work so well in the past. His efforts may boost his own power and prestige in the short term and reduce some forms of corruption. On balance, however, Xi's campaign will have disastrous long-term consequences for his country and the world. Not sure exactly why, but that seems to be extrovert sensation oriented with a lack of introverted intuition.
Yeah, he does seem like he values SE. It's just, I don't know where.
I think it's presumably in a higher position rather than a lower position. In the stronger position, I mean.
Yeah.
How did he start out? Where did he come from? Let's find out. Let's go pre-president. Let's see.
Right.
Okay. Let's see some biography. The son of Chinese communist veteran, was exiled to rural Yangchuan country as a teenager following his father's purge during the Cultural Revolution. His father was purged. Interesting. After studying at the Tsinghua University as a worker peasant soldier student, he rose through the ranks politically in China's coastal provinces. First General Secretary born after the establishment of the People's Republic of China, he introduced far-ranging measures to enforce party discipline and impose internal unity. Anti-corruption campaign has led to the downfall of prominent incumbent and retired Communist Party officials. A Chinese nationalist, he has tightened restrictions over civil society and ideological discourse by increasing censorship and mass surveillance, advocating internet censorship in China as a concept of internet sovereignty. He's also enacted a more assertive foreign policy. So definitely a high up position. He seems to have no trouble asserting his will and making things less free.
When he was officially like elected or voted in, like the very next day he went through and like captured all of his rivals and sent them to jail.
Wow. He acts quickly.
Yes. But I have to wonder if it's him or if it's just the party in general behind him. Like, it's hard to say who's in his ear.
That's true. Let's see. student militants ransacked his family home. One of his sisters was killed. Later, his mother was forced to publicly denounce his father as he prayed before a crowd as an enemy of the revolution. Goodness gracious.
He's one of those people you'd expect to have like a revenge plot, against the party or something.
Yes.
But they let him in.
Protection of his father. He went to work in, Mao Zedong's down to countryside movement. He worked as a party secretary in Yangjia, I don't know how to pronounce that, where he lived in a cave. After a few months, he unable to stand rural life. He ran away to Beijing. He was arrested during a crackdown on deserters from the countryside and sent to a work camp to dig ditches. After being rejected 7 times, he joined the Communist Youth League of China in 1971 by befriending a local official. So he used, perhaps, relationships to get him. He united with his father in 1972 because of a family reunion ordered by Premier Zhou Enlai. From 1973, he applied to join the Communist Party of China 10 times and finally accepted his 10th attempt. He studied chemical engineering. It seems to me as though he was relatively loyal to his father.
Seems that way.
As a matter of personal loyalty or of respect for authority, or both?
Well, the clash is that his father clashed against the national authority, the authority of Mao's China. Served as secretary for his father's former subordinate, Geng Biao.
Oh, there's not a lot in English. I don't think that's available is the problem.
Let's see what else we can find on him. Let's see if this could be of help. Hang on.
I did read in one article, this is kind of in line with my revenge plot theory.
Yeah.
But someone said she went on to lead the party that once sent him to live in a cave. So it's like, what does that mean functionally? Like if you're willing to...
It's sort of Count of Monte Cristo almost.
Yes.
Yeah, it gives me it's very Gamma-ish, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I think there are different ways you can interpret that. Is like why doesn't he get revenge on the specific individuals instead of making it about the whole party? The idea that the whole party is wronged him, versus that of if there is some specific or one person like behind it. That's just what I'm.
Actually, it could be that there are multiple enemies in the party throughout their running things, and those were the people he was targeting. Is there evidence he was targeting just a general, the people he had killed off when he came to power? They would have been his enemies quite personally, wouldn't they?
I think so. It was anyone set against him for whatever reason. There was a historian that said, though, with the way China is right now, it's kind of a winners takes all game. So it's like you have to make sure that your enemy is quenched.
Yes. There's also the fact that by turning into and purging the party of corruption, that brings more popular support.
Yes.
Let's see. It's evident from the first 3 years in office. His top priority legitimizes authority and rejuvenate the Communist Party. Any resource he can marshal to that effect. Be it revival of nationalists further, special red rhetoric, purging the party of corruption, can only further this objective. It is an open question of what the precise role as cult personality will play in the larger agenda, but its successful cultivation surely figures as a political game. Chinese public have been inured to the excesses and incompetence of officialdom. In China, both the young and old sometimes will sing catchy little ditties about the profligacies of Guanyan officials and resign themselves down a miserable chasm dividing these Guanyan from ordinary citizens. It's more the stiffness of technocrats, as President Hu Jintao, who we need to type at some point later. Near total absence of charisma has only contributed to the perception of Chinese leaders as necessarily devoid of warmth and vitality. In contrast, the comparative charm of Xi and his wife Peng Lihuan and the liveliness of their demeanor suggests a greater awareness of self-presentation and perhaps shrewder public relations. He may indeed believe and practice the doctrines he propounds, but more than mere theatre, he truly hopes to reform the behaviour and depravity of the party. I know, I'm sort of leaning around some sort of gamma SF.
I wonder if it would it make sense for him to have FE demonstrative if he cares about how people are interacting with each other or presenting?
Yeah, that could work.
Well, why not ESI over SE?
Because it seems like he's at least more charismatic than an ILI, or someone who's very much lacking. But an ESI can be sort of, he seems to have risen not so much from sort of big public expressions. He does appear quite dry on camera, but seems to have risen up through making close personal relationships.
Yeah, I think that could very much work for ESI. There is a bit more of a disconnect between how you appear to people on the relational one-on-one level versus that of the presentation, because ESIs can be quite around people that they like. They can be more open and charismatic, but to an outsider, they can appear more dry and tough.
Yes.
Good point.
There are many conceivable hypotheses, and she's attempted to build a personality cult. I list here a couple that strike me as relatively plausible. The truth is likely some combination of these. The first hypothesis is that he's pursuing a strategy because it will yield significant dividends, probably in the form of broader and deeper support among the general population. The second hypothesis is that he's pursuing a cult personality not merely because it might be politically beneficial, because it appeals to his personal ideological leanings. This runs afoul of a common belief in the competent Chinese autocrat, which assumes that Chinese leaders are both materialistically pragmatic and competent. Whether the assumption is, as Pei argues, more myth than fact. So there's a competency layer of the assumption. Sure. But I think this creation of more and more control of there's been a reduction in freedoms. That could be more. That could be more in line with ESI, I think, than SEE. But I think the extrovert sensation is certainly there. But this idea that everything is so controlled, and it's also it comes across externally as a bit boring.
Here goes Lecter.
Yeah, I could see. Well, maybe. I don't know. I don't know yet.
I get what you're saying, though. He seems kind of straight edge, you know.
He does appear sort of straight edge.
Yeah. I just really don't see SEE. I mean, I don't think. I think, honestly, the vulnerable would be I rather than any sort of L, because there is an interest in L. Maybe it's not quite as good or coherent or cohesive as you would expect from an LSI, which is what I was initially thinking. But it is more centered around not on this abstract principle of that ideology, but really the loyalty, it's very much specific to the country.
Yeah,
which I think is kind of strange for an ideology, because you would think that it would transcend like nations and cultures.
Also, Katie, you're not boring.
I think it could easily be role use of introverted logic. He's putting forward this supposed ideology. It's not especially structured as an ideology. They seem to be paying lip service to the idea that that a new president should have some sort of ideological underpinning, that sort of expectation of a Chinese leader.
I wonder if actually, if he is any vulnerable, the idea that he is kind of like swaying between all these people, like, you know, he made his way up the chain without doing anything too extreme, you know, like maybe not having those
sticking to convention.
Yeah.
Yes. He doesn't seem to have done anything but especially impulsive.
Or not without support, maybe.
Yeah.
Other than wanting to be president forever, you know.
Yeah, and even that's, I mean, Putin's done something very similar recently. I think it is sort of like, I want to grab power, but I want to do it in a way which, you know, removes any sort of uncertainty that I will remain in power, rather than I'm going to carry on winning elections and no one's going to beat me.
All of these autocrats have such circular logic. It's
That doesn't bother you.
Yeah, well.
Let's see if we can find anything else here. It is difficult. It's difficult with some of these leaders. For Xi Jinping, being a man of the people means, oh, come on. It's now being slow to load. You know, you start reading something, you click on it, and then it takes ages to load, and so you're just waiting for it to actually give you what you need.
Maybe the Chinese government found your internet connection. They tracked.
Maybe. Oh, come on. That's annoying.
They probably took all of his content off of the internet before we started this
Oh
video.
my God. My channel is going to just evaporate into smoke.
Yes.
Well, first it demonetized, and then.
What makes Xi's revolution distinctive, is what Elizabeth C. Economy has argued, is a strategy he has pursued, and it is strategic, it's not purely tactical, for dramatic centralization of authority under his personal leadership, the intensified penetration of society by the state, the creation of a virtual wall of regulations and restrictions that more tightly control the flow of ideas, culture, and capital into and out of a country, and the significant projection of Chinese power. It represents a reassertion of the state in Chinese political and economic life at home, and a more ambitious and expansive role for China abroad. Again, this looks very extroverted intuition rejecting. And there is some introverted intuition in that. It's not impulsive. It's not.
Yeah.
There's no chaotic erraticism.
Yeah,
here.
I agree. But I have a question about like ESIs and like who are like political figures, because I don't know much about like British politics, like a Margaret Thatcher or Theresa May being ESIs. I wonder what the possible similarities or parallels can be necessarily drawn, like from people who are like a certain type in power.
I'm not sure. It's not from a Chinese figure or any other sort of dictator figure. Maybe
it's a unique, sort of a unique case.
well, maybe if we go really far back to Sulla.
Yes. Also, maybe I don't think he's been typed, but I think Cincinnatus might have also. But I mean that.
Well, Cincinnatus sort of once he done what he needed to do, he stopped being in power. He didn't hang on to it.
It had the opposite effect, which isn't like the similar thing with George Washington.
Yes, he's also been described by those who know him, according to a Washington Post article, as pragmatic, serious, cautious, hardworking, down to earth, and low key. He was described as a good hand at problem solving and seemingly uninterested in the trappings of high office. Peng, I think his wife, describes she as hardworking, down to earth. When he comes home, I've never felt as if there's some leader in the house. In my eyes, he's just my husband. I think this is all leaning more towards, well, it's certainly not beta.
Yeah. It's still extroverted sensations in high position, of course, but there's still quite more R than I mean, we had to do a bit of digging, but to be fair, the control over the image, that part might not entirely like be his doing. Like, I mean, I mean, of course, there's still like, you know, how a politician is supposed to present themselves to the public, but there is like the circumstance that should be taken into account that the Chinese government wants this polished image of a leader figure.
Yeah, true.
Okay. Let's see this. This is about his propaganda. Let's see what it says. Oh, why is it taking so long? I can read it out. Okay. Beijing. He held up stalks of wheat and made small talk with farmers. He stood side by side with workers at an oil plant and spoke of building an invincible China. He called for China to become more self-reliant in the face of a trade dispute with the United States. President Xi Jinping of China this week visited the Northeast for what the state-run media called a 3-day inspection tour. The trip was much more than that. It was a chance for Mr. Xi to put himself on a pedestal with Mao Zedong, to rekindle a populist image and to fire back at President Trump and protectionist policies. Man in charge. It has a picture of him standing with farmers. So Mr. Xi has been criticized for inspiring a personality cult with parallels to Mao era, has taken note of Mao's propaganda with a common worker, cultivating a paternalistic and caring image. So what Xi Jinping has done is in one image from his tour of a farm in Heilongjiang province, he's shown under an idyllic blue sky, confidently stepping forward while the adoring crowd of farmers look on. The image is familiar. Its arrangement mimics the look and feel of painted propaganda posters from the 1950s, which often feature Mao mingling in bucolic settings. So he's aware of how to generate the right sort of image. And he seems to be quite comfortable going out and actually talking to people.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think on balance, ESI probably makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, should we move on to someone else?
I think the last.
Or do you guys like to finish up? It's nearly been 2 hours. Your choice. I can go on a bit longer.
It doesn't matter to me.
It's fine.
So enthusiastic.
Yeah, I want to look at
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Take a look.
I think I could probably do one more.
Yeah.
Were there any others?
That was it. Dunk Xiaoping's the last one.
Okay, good. Oh yeah.
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 Okay.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe if you'll indulge me, I know. Maybe I could. I know maybe we're kind of cutting into time, but I could talk about like some macro socionic stuff if the time permits.
Yes.
Just to notice what I've.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Do it. Yeah. Do you want to do it now?
Yeah, we can. Oh, yeah. Well, I think. Did you want to type Deng first, or?
Let's do Deng first, then let's talk about macro socionics. Good idea. Okay.
Step over here, please.
Okay. Hang on, let me take a look at my first, please.
Can you still hear the video or no?
I can still hear it.
Oh, mine cut off. That's weird.
That's odd. Oh wait, now I'm not hearing anything.
Sorry, guys, we're not able to hear when. Oh.
Yeah, I can't hear it. Oh wait, now it's coming back. I mean, it's just music.
Yeah, they're not really talking anyway, I guess. For his pragmatism.
No. Okay. Thank you for throwing us the bone.
Low profile, never take the lead. Hey. Do you want to say hello to everyone, Dad?
No, I don't. I want to know what the music is. Why listen to that?
Oh, it's just I don't know. It's just the video watching. Yes. Got around 13 people. Okay, so what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I noticed a few bullet points. He's known for his pragmatism.
Yes. Bold.
He prefers to keep a low profile and doesn't normally like initially take the lead or when it comes to like well, there wasn't really much context to that. It was really just stated. Deciding that the special economic zones were correct in his mind. Yeah. I think generally overall, I think there is probably a balance in or I think both strong like logic in terms of like P and L, perhaps, and maybe weaker F.
Okay. I also saw from his quotes, it says it doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice.
Yeah.
But
that fall into.
What do you think, Jamie?
I know generally he's very like he was the person who opened up China to the outside world, basically created this market-based economy. He instituted the one-child policy, so he was trying to rectify the population. You know, like he definitely made moves in order to create very quick, vast change.
I see. That's it. So I think certainly the pragmatism seems to show up quite a bit there. In a way, he's taking a similar sort of role to oh goodness, what is his name in Russia? Glasnost and Perestroika.
Gorbachev.
Gorbachev, that's it. Yes. So a similar sort of role there. Let's see. Apparently, the People's Republic of China. China pursues a far-reaching market economy reforms. Architect of modern China. He outmaneuvered the late chairman's chosen successor, became a new paramount leader of China, heading country beset with social conflict, disenchantment of the Communist Party, and institutional disorder. So China's political reforms by setting term limits for officials, proposing a systematic revision of China's third constitution, which was made during the Cultural Revolution. He supported the family planning policies to cope with China's overpopulation crisis, helped establish China's 9-year compulsory education, launched 863 program for science and technology, revived China's political reforms, which ended and failed during the June 4th incident in 1989. He never held office as the head of state, head of government. Some call him the architect of a new brand of thinking that combines social ideology with free enterprise, dubbed the socialism of Chinese characteristics. So he's the one who started that off. I see. Yes, I'm seeing extroverted logic in a pronounced position. Not much of a focus on introverted logic, whether that's ignoring or vulnerable. I'm not sure.
He seems to have done so much too. Like he just kept going and going, which I kind of wonder if that could point towards maybe like LIE or something. Maybe
that
like
was that was my impression.
Yes, he doesn't give the impression of having much of the physical presence.
Yeah,
but he seems to have a certain, at least an innovative energy to him.
Yeah, no sign of really slowing down.
No.
But still, like the opening up China, that part, it definitely seems like not just P, but I as well. There's really like really undoing the limitations of the system. Well, not overthrowing it entirely, but like working within, being an architect, and but like not holding really any major like higher position of power.
Yes.
Like acting, being comfortable acting behind the scenes and making it so that it's more open.
Yes. And it's interesting, he allows criticism. He repudiated the Cultural Revolution and launched the Beijing Spring, which allowed open criticism of the excesses and suffering that had occurred during the period. Meanwhile, he was the impetus for the abolition of a class background system. He gradually outmaneuvered his political opponents by encouraging public criticism of the Cultural Revolution. He weakened the position of those who owed their political positions to that event, while strengthening the position of those like himself who had been purged during that time. He received a great deal of popular support. So he's quite strategic in that respect, forward-thinking. He's playing a longer-term game.
I think he may have too actually reinstituted some books that were banned during that period.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely see higher extroverted intuition then. Certainly. Unlike Guofeng, Deng believed that no policy should be rejected outright simply because it was not associated with Mao. He did not object to policies on the grounds that they were similar to ones that were found in capitalist nations. Yes, a lack of introverted logic there. Or a lack of valuing of introverted logic. This political flexibility towards the foundation of socialism is strongly supported by quotes such as, "We mustn't fear to adopt the advanced management methods applied in capitalist countries. The very essence of socialism is the liberation and development of the productive systems. Socialism and market economy are not incompatible. We should be concerned about right-wing deviations, but most of all, we must be concerned about left-wing deviations." Although Deng provided the theoretical background and political support to allow economic reform to occur, the general consensus among historians is that few of the economic reforms that Deng introduced were originated by Deng himself. For instance, Deng Zhuenlai pioneered the four modernizations years before Deng. He openly supported it and was later adopted nationally. Many other forms were influenced by the experience of the East Asian tigers. This is in sharp contrast to the pattern in the perestroika undertaken by Gorbachev, in which most major reforms were originated by Gorbachev himself. The bottom-up approach of Deng reforms, in contrast to the top-down approach of perestroika, was likely a key factor in the success of the former. That's interesting. So he wasn't necessarily someone just imposed whatever he thought. Instead, he took what people were already thinking and made that work.
Yeah, it just seems very TE.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting. This is just quotes. Keep a cool head and maintain a low profile. Never take the lead, but aim to do something big. We lost him.
Yeah, he'll be back. We'll give it like 5 minutes or something like that.
I don't know. I still feel like LIE makes sense so far.
Yeah, I agree.
This is a fun time. Maybe his internet timed out. Kat, are you still there? Katie, are you still there?
Hi, sorry about that.
Oh,
Lost my connection there.
For a second, I thought the Chinese bureaucrats got you.
Oh no, I think it's my cat which got me. Yeah. Let's see. He is associated with some of the worst purges during Mao Zedong's rule. For instance, he ordered an army crackdown on a Muslim village in the Yunnan, which resulted in the deaths of 1,600 people, including 300 children. So he could also be pretty ruthless.
Yeah.
And he left in place an authoritarian government which continues to exist. Human rights abuses. He oversaw the Tiananmen Square massacre.
Ooh, yeah.
It was no major humanitarian, but he was clearly someone who was more pragmatic.
Yeah.
So I think LIE makes sense.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. It's good. Do you want to do a quick cheeky one? Look at Hu Jintao. Or should we go to macrosocionics?
I don't mind.
What do you think, Jamie?
I already have an opinion on Hu.
I think if we're gonna do it, we might as well do it. I guess.
One last one, and then let's do macrosocionics, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if I can get. Is there an interview with him?
What's your cat's name, Jack?
Oh, my cat's name is Matilda Hermione Crystal Aaron.
That's elite.
Ah.
I love
Well,
it.
she is quite an aristocat.
Aw, it's adorable.
Fluffy.
Let's see.
Cat. Yes, Fluffer.
Can't see any interviews of Hu Jintao. As him issuing a warning. Let's see this.
I think that's already kind of telling.
Yeah.
Really many interviews of him, and the only one he's in, he's issuing a warning.
Yes.
It's lovely.
China leaders, past, present, and future. President Hu Jintao led the Communist Party elite onto the stage. Behind him, his predecessor Jiang Zemin. Joining them, the anointed successor Xi Jinping. But Hu has a stern warning. The days of power and privilege could be under threat. Combating corruption and promoting political integrity is a major political issue, he says. If we fail to handle it, it could prove fatal to the party, cause the collapse of the party and the fall of the state. Listening on, the more than 2,200 delegates to the party congress. Every 5 years they meet, mapping out a new direction for a country that is now the world's second biggest economy. Challenges are rising, economic growth slowing, the gap between rich and poor growing wider, and the Chinese people anxious and angry. President Hu Jintao says there is much unfinished business. The party must listen to the people.
We should attach greater importance to improving the system of democracy and diversifying the form of democracy to ensure that people conduct democratic elections.
And this man must meet these challenges. Xi Jinping is the anointed next party leader, expected to be appointed at the end of the Congress. Barely known outside the Communist Party, Xi is about to become one of the most powerful men on the planet.
Xi Jinping is in many ways an unknown commodity. He's risen to the top of the Chinese system by being very, very careful not to disclose what he really thinks.
Oh, that's a little bit more towards the side.
Of Mao Zedong. His father, a revolutionary hero, Xi, one of the so-called party princelings. China watchers inside the country say his priority will be the survival of the Communist Party. This is a generational change at the top
Oh, what does he?
of the Communist Party. It only happens every 10 years and to listen to the words of President Hu Jintao, unless they get it right, and may not have too many more chances. Stand.
So it is quite. I think I know what you think, lad. Let's take a look at his Wikipedia page.
Also keep in mind, he is a well, he is commonly described as a technocrat. Yeah.
And what do you mean exactly by a technocrat?
Well, exactly what I mean by this is it's really the type of administration where he really sees himself as being really more of an expert in terms of not really just like for economic reforms and managing the party. He does have a background of where it's his technical expertise, and I definitely see that he believes that government should be run by people who are similarly experienced as him in these areas, and that it really shouldn't just be given to anyone. Also, hence the warning as well.
He was conservative with political reforms. He didn't shake things up, and yes, technocratic competence rather than persona was an important part for him. He was, because he emphasized consensus. He's a rather enigmatic figure in the public eye.
You think he's anti-FE, maybe?
I think quite possibly, yes. He voluntarily stepped down from power, and clearly not while he was on the way out either.
I wonder if that's an awareness of timing. Like,
yes, could be.
Yeah.
Scientific outlook on development. He distinguished himself from his predecessor in both domestic and foreign policy. His political philosophy during his leadership summarized by three slogans: a harmonious social society, domestically, and peaceful development internationally. Okay. Integrated sets of solutions to a raise of economic, environmental, social reforms, recognizing in inner circles the need for cautious and gradual political reforms. A country with a systematic approach to national structure and development that combines dynamic economic growth, a free market energized by a vigorous non-public, i.e. private sector, heavy-handed political and media control, so still we wanted to exercise quite a bit of control over the media, personal but not political freedoms, concern for the welfare of all citizens, cultural alignment, and synergistic approach to diverse social issues. So that you can do pretty much what you wanted, but you weren't allowed to engage politically just yet.
Everything you want, but
yeah, we're still running everything. Sorry. So it's quite very much low risk. Western criticism of Hu, particularly regarding human rights, exposes hypersensitivity to social stability, but does not lay as much emphasis on his fresh commitment to address China's multifaceted social problems. His pragmatic, non-ideological agenda has two core values: maintaining social stability to further economic development, and sustaining Chinese culture to enrich national sovereignty. He seemed to want more openness to the public on governmental functions and meetings. He also cancelled many events that are traditionally practiced, such as lavish send-off and welcome back ceremonies of Chinese leaders when visiting foreign lands. So all the sort of traditional sort of pomp and circumstance he wasn't interested in. Anyway, I can see why one would think ILI for this, for Hu Jintao. What are you thinking, Jamie?
Well, it's just clear that he had a problem with FE. So, I mean, it was interesting that he had more conservative, leaning. So I was thinking, like, okay, maybe that's obviously FE polar, maybe, but like the SE wasn't strong. Let's say that.
Yes. That makes sense. Any quotes here that can help? There's a big emphasis on the future, on future developments, making sure things develop in the right sort of direction. Strategic path of peaceful development and making change progress in the modernization drive. It's a very future-oriented. Yeah, I think I lie. Okay, I think that's everyone in terms of diagnostics. Vlad, we're going to talk a bit about macrosocionics, and then we can wrap up.
Yes. So precisely when thinking about Chinese history in particular, this is one of the major topics that I believe has been the most difficult to assess, because there is quite a unique circumstance around China where their political system isn't really quite geared around the traditional, at least before the Republic, or well, before the Qing fell. There is really this idea of a celestial empire that has the mandate of heaven, and whoever has that proclamation from heaven has that legitimacy. So I think that in terms of ancient history, I'm not too familiar with China and its developments then, but when it comes to early modern and like modern, I have noticed at least some in the way of which has been revealed in the way of development. I believe the Ming dynasty in particular was especially beta. I mean, even during the age of well, I mean, if you go earlier on, there was an interest briefly in terms of looking for ways to expand power outwards. There was an early attempt at colonization and exploration. I believe it was a faction of merchants and the maritime classes who ventured outwards to East Africa and collected new, and documented about the giraffes and people in the culture in that region. So, but once it was clear that they couldn't really expand outwards or continue to expand outwards, there was a focus really more on inward perfection and consolidating the state and the state's legitimacy. And not only this, but ensuring that the state had enough income by having enough tributary states who are within its sphere of influence. So I think there is definitely, I would say that it's really more of the, and also the class structure too as well. The people, the very fact that you have the unity between the scholarly class, the intelligentsia, with that of the bureaucracy, and you have like civil service examination tests in order to be able to get to that higher position is really more indicative of trying to it's pretty much combining that. So you're ensuring a centralized government that is that definitely has that sort of rigid legal, the more of a rigid legal underpinning to it. So now I believe when it comes to more recent developments in China, it's really shifted more from an early modern approach in beta more generally to that of gamma, I would argue. In particular, there is more of a focus on not just like with the abandonment, or well, not total abandonment, but a movement towards enriching a new mercantile class and being able to have that sense of a personal autonomy, not quite rights, but being able to enrich yourself or having that opportunity.
Yes.
It's very strange, but it has. I think it's making a shift towards gamma, or from beta to gamma, but there are still limitations within the state system that has existed for many decades that have limited this. So that's one major point on that. But if there were others, dynasties in particular, I could go through and analyze them as well. But I think in terms of shifts, that's the a predominant one that I've noticed.
I'd agree.
Now, has this shift, did it start, do you think, with Deng Xiaoping?
I think he was one of the major contributors that set this in motion, because at least when it comes to China, it was a little difficult to evaluate, because it seemed to be that in the early modern period that even though there were different, like everything was sort of centralized under that one government, even the internal factions, when China broke apart, it really just broke apart into more smaller beta clans and sort of warrior clans as well, sort of fighting it out to claim the new be the one to claim the mandate of heaven.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's that. There can be some contention on what specific types it would lead to or be, but I definitely think that for much of China's history, at least during the early modern period, it has been sort of trapped in this beta cycle, where it's really this movement from this intensified legal structure to that of a purely centralized government, to attaining this passionate ideal and uniting the people, like with Mao. And essentially, that's what I think is one factor that has been going on in China, the Chinese history.
Okay. I think when there may have been sort of an alpha stage, or maybe even a delta stage. I think of the philosophers, say Confucius and Mencius, do seem to be an interesting dialectic there.
Yeah.
Quite different.
Well, I haven't really researched too much into ancient Chinese history, because it would really take a long time to really sort through all of that data. So, but I do know of the Ming and the Qing and the Republic period and the People's Republic, and really more of that. But I don't doubt that there is at least, at the very least, a Delta culture that has been present in China.
I'd be interested in looking, maybe perhaps one day, more of a Tang dynasty.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Because if there's any one time it may have been more Gamma or even Delta, probably Tang would have been it.
Yeah.
The cultural hub.
Yes. Well, do you have any last thoughts, Jamie?
No, I'm just grateful I'm here.
Thank you so much for coming on here and giving us 2 hours, more than 2.5 hours of your time. And thank you for that as well. And also for so long. And thank you to Kamani, if he's still watching this, for trying to be part of it. And he had some role. We'll need to go over later and get a third vote on some of these typings. And hopefully we can benchmark a few. So I'm quite excited about that. And lastly, thank you to all the audience for sticking with us for as long as you have. It has been quite intriguing for me to learn a bit more about these different Chinese characters. Anyway, I hope you all have a lovely evening, and I should get some sleep soon. So, night all.
Good night.